show up to the county commissioners or the county councils and start asking questions of people that fund the sheriff and fund the prosecutor. Hey, why is this not being dealt with? That has a lot more power than people think. And we've seen just in the last year where mama bears have stood up in school boards, and we're seeing a huge shift across this entire country.
Welcome, everybody, to Conversations That Matter. I am your host, Alex Newman, senior editor at the New American Magazine. We have a returning guest, a good friend, Matt Shea. He's like one of those founding fathers kind of guys. He's a pastor. He's a lawyer. He's a decorated Army combat veteran. He is the host of Patriot Radio. He was a legislator for 12 years. Actually, he ended up as the chair of the GOP conference in the Washington state legislature. He's a constitutional attorney, just a brilliant man of God. He is a pastor at On Fire Ministries now, where he just preaches amazingly and does all kinds of wonderful work for the kingdom. Matt, welcome to the program. I wanted to bring you on because you have had some revelations for a while. You haven't been free to discuss them, but we did some work on this at the New American a while ago. There was a guy called Larry Wooten, a whistleblower, who back in 2017 blew the whistle on some really shady stuff going on at the Bureau of Land Management in terms of terrorizing citizens, in terms of religious bigotry, horrible stuff. But like those, funny infomercial shows late at night. But wait, there's more. And there's more. Matt, tell us what's in these documents that you have obtained.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Alex. It's a pleasure to be on once again. This is pretty explosive stuff, and actually there is more to come out here in the next couple of weeks. Again, not, I don't want to blow sources or do anything like that, but there's more that's going to be coming out here in the next couple of weeks. We have a memorandum. It's a whistleblower memorandum from Larry Wooten. We're calling it Wooten 2 because he had the first one that you just mentioned, but this one is 252 pages, very detailed, very specific. It came out as part of a civil lawsuit engaged in by Todd Engel and Joseph O'Shaughnessy. And as part of their 56D motion with the federal court, they put forward some allegations that the government has not provided evidence to refute. And I just want to go over those very quickly because they're so important. The first is that when we're talking about the Nevada impoundment of cattle down at the Bundy Ranch that happened back, I think it was in 2014, that they are now putting before the court that there was no notice ever given according to federal law that was required for that impound to even begin with. So that means they're alleging that the government went there and was there illegally the entire time. This is huge. This is actually a complete exoneration of every single person that showed up to protest and every single person that showed up in support of the Bundy family. The second part that's more interesting than that even, I think, is that there was no brand inspection done, again, as required by federal law prior to this impoundment. They didn't do any of that. This is what was alleged in these court papers, that, again, it does not look like the federal government has produced any evidence to refute this. And number three, an allegation of shredding and destroying evidence as part of this motion. Again, that it does not appear there's anything to refute this at this point. So these are explosive allegations. When this is ruled on by the federal court, I mean, this is going to be a separate story. But the fact that the federal government was there, according to this law, illegally because no notice was given, no brand inspection was done, that's huge. I mean, that is huge. And it really goes back to this whole thing about the deep state acting in a way that is outside of the law consistently that we've seen over the last 10 years. So that's the first part. The second part is this actual memorandum itself. We can get into that, but there were allegations that there were no snipers there, and so the Bundys were just making this up. Now it comes out that, in fact, there were snipers there. This was testified about in federal court, and then a whole other list of abuses that we can go through right now if you want to.
This is amazing, Matt. This is just absolutely amazing. I hope folks will go back and read. I did an article on the Wooten memo, the original revelations, back on December 19th of 2017. The article is "Lawmaker Seek Investigation After Whistleblower Exposes Federal Thugs." Some of the stuff that came out from Larry Wooten, the whistleblower. He was, by the way, the lead BLM investigator on this case. He showed that the special agent in charge of this, Dan Love, he was already under investigation by Congress. He had a kill list and a trophy commemorating the ranchers whose deaths he contributed to. This is a bureaucrat who was very proud of his role in driving some ranchers in Utah to commit suicide. The memo also exposed these really weird habits from this guy. Apparently, he used to like to photograph his own excrement. He had lots of pictures of his girlfriend's private parts. He was sending these to colleagues. I mean, just a very, very sick individual, clearly some problems in the head. And yet he's running around as a special agent in charge, pointing guns at people, trying to stir up a mess that could have easily resulted in the deaths of innocent people. And so Larry Wooten was key in exposing all this. Matt, you said there was more revelations. Break those down for us, please.
So one of the other revelations here is that, again, the federal government to date has not offered any evidence to refute this. One of the other allegations that was part of this is that they did not coordinate with local law enforcement to the fullest extent possible, which is required by federal law. And in fact, very specifically, they went and said, hey, we actually talked to the local law enforcement officials and we ignored their advice. Not only did they not coordinate to the fullest extent of the law, they actually ignored their advice on doing what they advised at the state level, a soft impoundment. In other words, put a lien on the property instead of going in there and trying to create a confrontation. Here's the other, and probably one of the most important pages in this entire whistleblower memorandum is page 120. And it says this: you may also remember disclosures about an extensive social media BLM misinformation campaign directed by blank that seemed to have the effect of aggravating the public sentiment. The misinformation campaign was similar to a military operation, an intelligence gathering operation, and was in regard to constitutionally protected First Amendment activities and akin to the intelligence preparation of the battlefield. These are very specific terms of art, alleging that the BLM intentionally went in there to deceive the public, number one. Number two, to do it in a way to gather intelligence on people who were acting within their constitutionally protected rights. And number three, that they did this as part of a military-style campaign to crush dissent. This is, again, this is explosive stuff. I don't know why this isn't, a news story all over the country right now. This clearly speaks to the events of just even the last few days that are happening with President Trump right now. And I think that as more revelations like this come out and more courageous whistleblowers come out, we're going to see some pretty shocking things in the extent of the depth and depravity of the deep state in intentionally trying to not just evade the Constitution, but intentionally try to ignore it or crush it. And that it should be concerning to every single American.
Yeah, this is so concerning, Matt. And I'm looking at the document you just mentioned. It looks like there was an FBI nexus here. The FBI couldn't specifically participate in the intelligence gathering activities, but you've got this intelligence gathering operation. It says that they created this newly formed BLM unit called the Threat Mitigate. I mean, it sounds like this Bureau of Land Management, which is supposed to be kind of managing federal lands, is acting like some paramilitary organization of a dictatorship. I mean, this is just shocking. And, some of these people have now been removed from power, people like Dan Love. But a lot of the people involved in this really crime of immense proportions that easily could have resulted in deaths of innocent people, they're still running around with badges and guns and who knows what else. It's just shocking. Folks, we're going to go to break. We're going to come right back with more from Matt Shea about where we go from here. This is just incredibly shocking. Stay tuned.
As a lumberjack, I've been cutting wood for decades. My job is pretty straightforward. I see the wood, I chop the wood. My axe goes through every time. You remember when everyone bought all the toilet paper? And they wanted me to wear these things? And someone invested a lot of money into this stuff. They say I'm part of a global plan. I don't think so. It's too hot, it's too cold. You know what? The weather changes. We even hear crazy ideas on how kids should learn.
Here's the news, Dad.
Is it, son? Is it?
What about this one, Dad?
Nope. It's hard to tell what's real and what's fake these days. There's just too much baloney out there. At the New American, they cut through the baloney and give me the truth.
Visit thenewamerican.com and subscribe to get 50% off the cover price. And if you want an even better deal, use the promo code 10OFFSUB. Again, that's 10OFFSUB for more than 50% off.
Welcome back to Conversations That Matter, folks. We are with Matt Shea. Just extraordinary revelations here about what the Bureau of Land Management was doing. This is now coming out in federal court cases, so Matt's had this information for a while. But we reported in 2017 about Larry Wooten, the lead investigator for this BLM operation, just exposing unbelievable horror from the federal government. I mean, acting like a gaggle of criminals, a gang of thugs, or worse, a Gestapo brown shirt operation. And yet there is still more, Matt, more to be exposed in their intelligence gathering, and they're trying to skirt the law, skirt the Constitution. Tell us what else is in these documents.
Well, again, on page 120, probably one of the most important pages in this entire whistleblower memorandum of 252 pages, it says this. It says that intelligence gathering generally over social media using undercover accounts and open monitoring was directed by blank and conducted by a newly formed BLM unit called the Threat Mitigation Unit, commanded also again by former BLM blank. Now listen to this. This activity, which was evidently prohibited by FBI policy, was allowed and conducted in the absence of a specific BLM policy, in essence, by using a directed loophole to conduct the electronic surveillance and monitoring. In other words, they knew what the law was, and instead of the de facto position that is supposed to be of federal agencies, which is to protect the Constitution, they actually were doing every single thing they could to actually go around it. And this, again, extremely concerning. And I'm sure there's going to be lawsuits from some of the people that were prosecuted by the federal government for showing up there at the Bundy Ranch. This is going to continue into the future. Civil litigation is, I'm not going to say it's a foregone conclusion, but it seems likely based on these new revelations. And there's even more. On page 245, probably the second most important page of this memorandum, it lists a whole series of misconduct. And again, you got to understand that the whistleblower here was himself a special agent for the BLM. This is somebody who has, I think, a couple decades of experience in investigations. And so this isn't somebody just off the street or somebody just throwing things out there. Here is what a note says on this page in the memorandum. They asked him, the prosecutor asked the whistleblower, what he personally thought about the BLM special agent in charge. And this is the quote. I told him I thought the BLM special agent in charge was a dirtbag, end quote. Then he continues, I based this perception on the following allegations committed by the BLM SAC. He sent photographs of his own feces to peers and subordinates, sent photographs of his sexual conquests and genitals to his peers. He proudly displayed a kill book in reference to people who have committed suicide as a result of the BLM SAC's investigations. And it continues and continues. But then it gets to this, where it talks about how there was also some of these BLM agents and apparently some other people there at the Burning Man festival, and it engaged in some what would be considered impeachable. In other words, it could be used as evidence of impeachment and character evidence, impeachable activities at the Burning Man. It continues again, 252 pages. This is a broad overview, but just these things should concern every single American. This should actually require an investigation by Congress. It should require even deeper investigations into the officials that were involved in this, not only in the BLM, but also in the FBI and the Assistant U.S. Attorney's Office.
Yeah, this stuff is just so shocking, Matt. And, to have this guy proud of the people that he led to commit suicide, to have him bragging about these things. And this seems to be a systemic problem. I mean, you and I both know that there are some wonderful people who still work for the federal government, who still work in federal law enforcement and in the intelligence agencies. But it seems like this corruption, this rottenness is just so deep. And I don't know where it ends. But so, Matt, I want to ask now about, solutions. We see this escalating corruption. I mean, we're seeing it now on our televisions every day. They're going after Donald Trump. They're going after anybody who tried to help Donald Trump. But What do we as regular citizens do about this? What should legislators be doing about this at the state and the federal level? What should law enforcement? I mean, this seems to me like a case where prosecutors need to be looking at this and possibly filing criminal charges. Where do we go from here? How do we stop this?
So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different solutions, but let me focus on just a few right now. First, at the local level, the county sheriff and the county prosecutor are absolutely critical. So the question is, the FBI operated in this county in Nevada. The county sheriff could investigate this. The county prosecutors could prosecute this case. And this is part of the checks and balances in our system. Not only do we have a checks and balance across horizontally, but we have one vertically as well between the federal government, the state government, and the local governments. They have the power to investigate these things because some of these allegations clearly imply crimes. So this gives at least probable cause, especially since it comes from a special agent, to look into this. So what can people do? Make sure you elect a county sheriff and a county prosecutor that are willing to bring these investigations forward, and not just on this issue, but the infiltration of Chinese intelligence assets and jihadi assets into America. The second thing that I think people can do at the local level is show up. When these kind of things become public, and the sheriff has a press conference, show up as a citizen and start asking questions. Show up to the county commissioners or the county councils and start asking questions of people that fund the sheriff and fund the prosecutor. Hey, why is this not being dealt with? That has a lot more power than people think. And we've seen just in the last year where mama bears have stood up in school boards, and we're seeing a huge shift across this entire country with school board races, including right here in Spokane County. So, liberal so-called Washington state, Spokane County can do it. Anywhere in the country can do it. And then the third thing that I would say is this, and this is the most important. People need to pray. They need to get right with the Lord, and they need to start going out into the street and evangelizing and preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. We cannot any longer be a church inside the four walls of the church. We need to be a church that is going into the world and bringing the light.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Matt. And I think part of the reason our culture and our government are in the toilet is because Americans have turned their back on God. They don't know what the Bible says anymore. They don't respect moral precepts. And that's partly because the church has not been doing what it's supposed to be doing, making disciples. Matt, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for all that you do. I understand there's going to be more revelations. I look forward to chatting with you again very soon. Tell the folks before we let you go, you've got a wonderful program on Patriot Radio. Tell the folks how to listen to your show. How can people tune into your sermons, which are just fantastic? How do people follow your work?
The quickest way to do it is SpokaneOnFire.church, SpokaneOnFire.church, and also on Rumble, Matt Shea, and you can also type in Patriot Radio. Thanks, Alex, and really appreciate your work as well.
Thank you so much, Matt. God bless you. All righty, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Conversations That Matter. Share this with your sheriff. Share this with your county commissioner. Share this with your member of Congress. Folks, it is unacceptable that this stuff is going on in our country. It cannot be tolerated anymore. Get this information out there. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Alex Newman. This is Conversations That Matter for the New American Magazine. Until next time, God bless you all.